Welcome back to 405 Sports. Today we're going to be talking about UFC 284. Now, before we get into these fights, I do want to say it sucks because we are missing a lot of guys on this card, like a Tai Tuivasa, like a Robert Whittaker, like a Kai France, and I can go on and on and on. Casey O'Neill, I can literally go on and on. Wish we could have those guys and girls on this card, but sometimes you just can't get fights for these fighters, and that does suck. But there's still a lot of talent on this card, but you just hate to know that you could have those guys, those fun characters in this sport. Like, who hates Robert Whittaker? Who hates Tai Tuivasa? Who hates Kai France? Like, those are all just fan favorites. You can't hate those guys. I wish we had those guys on this card, but let's go ahead and get right into it. Obviously, Volk versus Islam. My pick is going to be Volk, or that's who I'm rocking with. Let me just say that. I'm saying that Volk. Here's the thing. I really want to say Islam is going to win just because he's a bit bigger, but I've always doubted Volk. I've always doubted him. I've doubted him in every Max fight. I didn't really doubt him in the Korean Zombie fight. Or the Ortega fight. Now, were there times in the Ortega fight where I was like, yes. But the Zombie fight, no. I do think he lost the second fight to Max. I digress. I'll let it go. But I'm rocking with Volk, but I do think Islam will probably win. But if there's one guy in the UFC that I think can move up a weight, obviously it's been done before, but that can bring the challenge like nobody else, I do think it's Volk. So we'll see. I don't know. It's a very weird fight to pick. So, but I could also see Islam dominating. But who knows? Now we have the 145 interim title bout, which, do we need an interim title? No, but I digress. Yair Rodriguez, Josh Emmett. I saw Josh Emmett at UFC Austin. I didn't agree with him winning. I thought Calvin Kattar won the fight 3-2. Pretty easy, actually. I really thought Calvin Kattar won that fight pretty easy, but that's okay. Again, I digress. Yair Rodriguez, he's kind of getting an in with this fight after his Brian Ortega fight that, we don't talk about that. That was a bad 2 weeks for the UFC. Tom Aspinall, Brian Ortega both get hurt in back-to-back weeks of main events in the first round. So we don't talk about that. But anyways, I'm going to go with Yair Rodriguez. He brought the fight to Max Holloway. I don't know. I think he's a better striker. I think he's better on the ground. Maybe not in terms of wrestling, but in terms of grappling, I do think he's better. I do think Josh might go for an approach of a wrestling, but I don't know. I'm going to go with Yair decision is what I'm going to say. Jack Della Maddalena versus Randy Brown. I'm going to go with Jack Della Maddalena. 3 fights in the UFC, 3 first-round finishes. This guy's so fun to watch. And he was literally like, hey, I want to fight on the Perth card, but before I fight on the Perth card, let me get one more fight in 2022. I mean, what an absolute beast. Randy Brown's no joke, though. I like Randy Brown. I just like Jack a little bit more. I don't know. Randy Brown just didn't really impress me all too much last year. In 2021, he was growing on me, and then in 2022, he just didn't really impress me. And I'm gonna go with Jack. I don't think he's going to knock him out. I think it'll be a decision. I do think this is the most tested that Jack will be, but I'm gonna go rock with Jack. The minus 305, I don't agree with that, but I don't know. I guess this will really be to show like what his hands are in terms of power. So we'll see. Justin Tafa versus Parker Porter. Justin Tafa is just a fun fighter, a fun heavyweight. Is he great? Not really. Is he bad? No. But he can stand there and he will throw with you, and it's just fun to watch, especially with heavyweights. So I will rock with Justin Tafa just because I feel like the crowd will be behind him massively. So yeah, not much there. Jimmy Crute versus Alonzo Menifield. I'm going to go with Jimmy Crute. This is another example of I feel like he's going to have an advantage of the fans, kind of like Tafa will. Especially Jack. I didn't even mention that. This is in Jack's hometown of Perth. Like, he's from there. So he'll actually have a really big pop, too. I mean, every Australian will, but I just, Jimmy Crute hasn't fought since 2021. And I feel like that's a good break. Look at like Calvin Kattar. He took a good almost year. Jimmy Crute's taken even longer. He had not a bad 2021, but he had a tough 2021. Jamal Hill and then the fight before that with Anthony Smith at UFC 261. So he had a tough 2021. So obviously there's no reason, like, there's not a bad reason you lost to Jamal Hill. He's the light heavyweight champion now. Now the Anthony Smith fight, he wanted to keep going, but the ref wouldn't let him. So I'm going to rock with Jimmy Crute just because he's had this long layoff. And really, he was looking like top-tier potential when he first came in. I don't agree with the minus, I don't have it in there again, 230. I don't agree with that, but I'd probably say like minus 185. But that's all right. Tyson Pedro returns for the first time since UFC 278, where he got a win versus Harry Hunsucker. I'm going to rock with Tyson Pedro. I mean, he's dealt with like 3 different fights for this camp, and I feel like I just feel like he's going to win. I don't really know why. I just want to talk about Shannon Ross. Shout out to you. He had an injury to his appendix in his Dana White's Contender Series fight and almost won the fight. He got knocked out, but there's nothing to be saddened about by it. He fought the fight with a ruptured appendix. So Dana still gave him the contract, which is sick. So just shout out to him. Hopefully he gets the job done. Jamie Malarkey is back. I don't think he's fought since his Michael Johnson fight, where I thought Michael Johnson won the fight. But again, I digress, guys. I'm going to rock with Jamie Malarkey, though. Next is Jack Jenkins, who's a featherweight out of Australia. He was on Dana White's Contender Series, and man, this guy's got power for a featherweight. He's got real power in his hands, and I think he'll show that in this fight. So I'm going to rock with Jack Jenkins. And then Shane Young is returning, and he was a very big prospect out of New Zealand, and everyone was kind of like getting on the high. He joined the UFC, and then he loses to eventual champ Alexander Volkanovski. Nothing wrong with that. And then he had a tough 2021 or 2022. I can't remember which year exactly. But he just had a tough year, and he's taken a lot of time off. Shane Young hasn't fought since March 27th of 2021. So he's taken a good long break, and he's only 29 years old. Think about that. That's a long time. So I think he's going to come back and get a win. And we'll go to the last fighter. Zabari Tugov is probably one of the unluckiest fighters on the roster. If you don't know, he's lost twice in the UFC, and he's had 1 draw. And all of those have been splits. They've been splits. And I honestly could argue he's undefeated in the UFC. So he's had a tough go in the UFC. He hasn't had any bad losses. All right, guys, that is UFC 284 in Perth, Australia. Champ versus champ. I wish there was more marketing for this card. Whatever. I don't care. Power Slap's terrible, but I'm not talking about Power Slap. I don't want to give Power Slap any views. I just don't want to give them anything. I think it's stupid. So, again, I digress. UFC 284. It's going to be a great card. We're missing a couple guys. That's all right. Thank you guys for watching the video.